Hello, friends, and welcome back. My name is Carly, and this is Owning Authenticity. I really hope you're enjoying this series on the Owning Authenticity model. So if you aren't familiar that you've popped into the middle of a series, that's no problem. This video is still going to be valuable even standing on its own. But in the description box, I did list the playlist where you can dive into really seeing everything that you're about to get to taste in this particular video. So this video, we are diving into the second layer of the root system underneath owning authenticity. It's very easy to say the words, just be yourself. And what the fuck does that mean? Okay, like how do you actually do that? How do you actually live that like on a daily basis? How do you transform your life if need be? Like if you've been being inauthentic or you recognize in certain areas, certain situations with certain people, you have a greater tendency towards inauthenticity. Please know that you are not alone and that if anything, that is a very normal response to growing up in our modern day culture and civilization where we think that there is a particular right way to be. And the whole guiding principle of owning authenticity is that the only one who knows what's right for you is you. There is no one right way to be. There's only what's right for you, and not even necessarily what's right for you is like a stagnant thing. It's growing and evolving with you as you grow and evolve. So what's right for you right here, right now, may or may not be what's right for you tomorrow or 5 years from now. You get the picture. So in this video, we are specifically talking about truth telling, and this is where I want to really dive in, and you'll notice this is also the first place on the model where we have these feeder components. So the lighter boxes on the outside that are feeding into truth telling, that is going to be covered in truth telling part 2. So that'll be out here in just a little bit if you're watching at the time I'm releasing this. If you're catching this way later, check out the playlist. This is the next one. Okay, cool. And before I get into that, I also want to talk about something that, like, even as I'm talking through this model, like going through each of the pieces, I'm getting to learn more deeply. Like the model itself is like undressing and like revealing itself to me as I go. And something that I learned about the model as I recorded the first few pieces, and now here we are like a week later, I'm recording the next few pieces. Something I've learned is like every time you deepen into the roots, you essentially go back to the beginning and start again. So like to get into truth telling, you really do go back and like uncover the next layer of self-awareness and deconditioning in order to even get into truth telling. And so I think it'll make a little more sense as I go into my story here of like my own personal journey with truth telling and how that specifically came to the forefront for me. So like I mentioned in the self-awareness journey video, that began for me in early 2015 was when my self-awareness journey like officially began. And then you fast forward to the end of 2020 and my friendship, my primary friendship, I felt like I was walking on eggshells in order to make this friendship work and like allow it to continue. Meant that, you know, and if you're not familiar with the walking on eggshells metaphor, it's like I'm tiptoeing around this person to try to like be vigilant of like, what do they need from me? And I'm very much doing the social chameleon dance of morphing and molding and heightening and lowering and shrinking and expanding and like doing what I need to do to be balancing to the friendship itself. And this walking on eggshells feeling really peaked for me at the end of 2020, and it birthed through me as entering into 2021, I was setting my yearly mantra, which is something I had been doing for a few years at that point. And it gave me this like push to set my yearly mantra for 2021 as the year of speaking truth. The year of speaking truth. And I thought at the time that it would be that simple. Speak your goddamn truth. Like, just tell the truth. Like, just say what's real for you. Okay. Just be yourself. Like, it is not that simple. Okay. And this is again where I say, like, when you have a deepening intention into your authenticity, you've essentially expanded into your journey. And at that point of expansion, you are a new you. And so at that point, your level of self-awareness to support you in operating at that expansion, aka like my intention to be a truth teller, I am now a bigger version of myself. And what does that mean? That means I have to go back to the beginning and meet myself like it's brand new. I'm a new version of me. My self-awareness is this big and I just got this big. I need to expand my self-awareness. So every time we deepen into the roots of owning authenticity, we go back to the beginning and we go through the layers again. And I'm seeing this setting itself up as a pattern that will continue. And so I'm going to try to incorporate that kind of mentality as we go through the deepening layers. But long story short, what happened in my year of truth telling, like I was all on fire about like total permission for me to say all the things. Look out, world, I'm ready to be honest. The first few situations that presented themselves where in my body I could feel the dissonance, like we talked about in the deconditioning video, that like the best thing that can happen is that you start to feel the aggravation and the dissonance between what is being expected of you socially and what is true for you. So like feeling that like, oh God, this doesn't feel good. And then you give yourself permission to like, well, speak your truth, say what's true for you, say what you want, like voice your needs, take up space, all of these things. I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't do it. And I realized that at that point, there are multiple components to truth telling. Number one is absolutely giving yourself permission to do it. But number two, and this we'll get a lot more into this as we get into the feeder components of truth telling. But number two is that you have to know what that truth is. Okay. And that may sound deceptively simple, but like it is so much easier to project onto somebody else that like they don't want my truth. They don't want to hear my truth. Like they don't want that from me. Like they don't respond well, blah, blah, blah. And like that's why I can't tell my truth because they don't want it for me. There's a part of us that can be real righteous about something like that. And again, it is total self-protection. It's a defense mechanism because again, it's easier to project that onto them than to dig into yourself and give yourself full permission to speak your truth and have nothing to say. It was a very eye-opening moment those first few times, like January, February 2021, when I was fully ready and like giving myself permission to speak my truth, and like the words weren't there. And it would be like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to give myself permission to ride the bicycle. And then you go and like get on the bicycle and you immediately fall over because you haven't practiced riding a bicycle. So like giving yourself permission to tell your truth, absolutely critical. But once you do that, please expect that truth telling is a skill. It's a muscle and it must be practiced and built. So it's not something that's just going to be there because all of a sudden you decide that today is the day I'm going to tell my truth. And of course, there are exceptions to this rule. It's, you know, even in the journey that I took between 2015 and the end of 2020, like there were definitely moments where I spoke truth, but it wasn't my dominant, consistent, embodied way of being. It was the exception. right? It was like a peak critical moment where something had come to a head and I was speaking my truth in that moment because I couldn't take it anymore. That is very different than in all situations, always consistently, with no exception, you tell your truth, right? Those are two very different things. And so truth telling as part of owning authenticity is to not shrink, not hide from your truth in any circumstance, with any person, under any conditions, period. And how many people can honestly raise their hand and be like, yep, that's me. Even if you think it is, like, I was in a situation yesterday where I noticed, like, whoa, how interesting. Look at me shrinking. Look at me knowing what I want to say and dialing it back. How interesting. And again, that's self-awareness, right? Like we can't expand beyond things that we don't even notice, right? So like self-awareness is absolutely key. Recognizing the conditioning, the social expectations of you in the situation, and that, remember, those social expectations, like, yes, they were external at one point, but by the time you're acting on it, you've internalized it and you are now the one holding those expectations. So that's really good news, because that means you can take those expectations off of yourself and expand. And at this point, I know that I am like really expanding my truth-telling muscle when my scalp tingles while I'm speaking the truth. Like when I have full on scalp tingle while I'm telling the truth, like whatever that truth is, it's like the burn you get in your muscle when you're like lifting past your capacity. Like you've either gone up in a heavier dumbbell, or you're like on the 21st rep and you're like, whoa, this burns. Like learn to pay attention to that sign inside yourself. Like what is the signal your body gives you when you are like really on your edge and doing the part, leaning into the expansion that is going to create a stronger truth-telling muscle within you, as far as embodying it, doing it as your normal, regular response in almost every situation. And then also pay attention to those situations where, what are the times you shrink? What is the expectation that you have inside yourself that's not allowing you to like fully express and fully tell your truth the way that it authentically wants to be said? And not with a judgmental perspective at all, but with a scientific observer perspective of, oh, how interesting that when I'm in this situation with this person, it's always my tendency to shrink. I wonder why that is. Let me journal about it. Let me close my eyes and get quiet and see if I can see anything inside myself as far as, why doesn't it feel safe to be here right now and be as big as I want to be, as honest as I want to be? Why can't I do that? And again, we're not forcing anything. We're not, charging through and powering through, but in a way of getting really deeply curious and continuing that journey of deconditioning and taking those unrealistic expectations off of you. I say unrealistic only meaning that it's out of alignment with your own personal integrity, your own personal, and what do I mean by integrity? Your own personal authenticity. What's right for you? Your honesty is right for you. And there are likely many, 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 many layers of things holding it back. Even as you do get really strong in your truth telling, it's totally normal to get a little bit stronger in your truth telling, and a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. And again, going full circle, every time you expand, you're meeting yourself through brand new self-awareness. Who is this version of me? Oh, how interesting. I'm more expanded now. Who is this version? What is she capable of? What is she going to say? Where's she going to go? What's she going to do? Right? So like getting to know ourselves, that's why it takes a lifetime and it never really ends. Self-awareness expansion never really ends. So this has been such a joy of getting to record this truth-telling video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, take a second and like the video. That is so helpful for the growth of my channel. and hop on my mailing list. There's a link in the description. You can go to owningauthenticity.com/email list. I am doing a free event coming up in July of 2024. If you're catching this at the time of recording, if you're watching later, still go ahead and hop on the mailing list because there'll most likely be a free live event right around the corner from whenever you're finding this. Until next time, I do hope you will take such good care of your beautiful, authentic self. Be sure to tune back in for Truth Telling Part 2, where we go into the feeder components. And until next time, I already said that, but you know what? Take extra special care of yourself, and I'll see you then. Okay, bye.